Hello there, and welcome everyone. In this video, we're going to take a look back at all 10 fish I submitted for the 2024 Georgia Bass Slam. I'm going to give a brief summary of how and where the fish were caught, the conditions that day, and the tackle used to catch the fish. So I hope you like the video, and thanks for watching. If you've never heard of the Georgia Bass Slam, it's a program the Georgia DNR started in 2017 to recognize anglers with the knowledge and skill to catch different species of black bass in different habitats across the state. Another reason or purpose of the Georgia Bass Slam is to stimulate interest in the conservation and management of native black bass and their habitats. Georgia has 12 native species of black bass, but some are so similar you can't really identify those fish in the field without genetics. So to make life easier for everybody, Largemouth Bass, Florida Bass, and Largemouth Florida hybrids are all eligible as Largemouth Bass for the Georgia Bass Slam. And the DNR did the same thing with Spotted Bass, Alabama Bass, and Spotted Alabama hybrids. They're all eligible as Spotted Bass for the Georgia Bass Slam. So that's why you have 10 species on the Georgia Bass Slam list. To achieve a slam, anglers have to catch at least 5 different species in a calendar year. 5 is the minimum number required for a slam, or you can try to catch all 10 species on the list. Once you complete a slam and submit all of the required info, the Georgia DNR will send an envelope like this, and you'll get a personalized certificate and a letter that congratulates the angler on the number of species caught. You also get 2 free passes to the Go Fish Education Center in Perry, Georgia, a decal of every species caught, and a tape to measure your fish. They also add your name and the number of species caught to an annual list of successful slam anglers on the Georgia DNR website. Your name also goes into a drawing for a grand prize, which includes a framed print of Georgia black bass species and a lot of other really cool stuff. I do the Georgia Bass Slam every year. It's a fun challenge, and it doesn't cost anything to enter. You just need a valid Georgia freshwater fishing license, which is something I get every year anyway. Now, last year, I had every intention of doing a separate video for every species on the list. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, so I'm making this video for anyone interested in how I caught these fish. The first species was a nice pre-spawn Talapusa Bass caught in mid-April on a Texas-rigged green pumpkin purple zoom finesse worm with an 1/8 ounce bullet weight and a Gamakatsu 1/0 offset worm hook. And I was fishing that rig on the custom rod my friend Brett made from a Cashin carbon fiber rod blank. The 6'9" length is perfect for creeks and small rivers like this, where you have lots of trees that hang over the water. And this rod is a medium power with a fast action, which is great for shaky head and Texas rigged soft plastics, which I fish a lot. The reel is a Shimano 2500 Stratic with clear 8-pound Berkeley Trilene XL monofilament line. That line, by the way, is available at every Walmart I've ever been to, so whenever I'm in a situation where I need some clear 8-pound line and I'm out of town or whatever, that's the product I usually buy. As far as conditions go, you can see in the video it was mostly sunny and the water was relatively clear, which is probably the single most important factor when you're targeting upland species of black bass like the Talapusa bass. They feed primarily by sight, so you always want to go when the water's clear or relatively clear. Under the right conditions, they can be caught when the water has a light stain, but they're not going to move as far to hit a lure when visibility is reduced. What a lot of people don't realize is that upland streams here in the southeast used to clear up a lot faster and stay clear longer before humans started cutting down trees and digging along the stream banks to farm and build roads and houses. That's why these fish developed traits, behaviors, and life histories that allow them to thrive in very clear water. Unfortunately, many upland streams have been heavily impacted by land use changes. Land use changes are any kind of human activity that cause erosion and excess sediment to enter a stream. Land development and clearing from construction, farming, logging, and mining are some of the more common land use changes that cause erosion. If you look at the bottom of the stream where I'm catching these fish, there's always lots of clean, coarse substrate free of silt and other fine sediment. And that's because these areas usually have lots of macroinvertebrates. Macroinvertebrates are small animals that don't have a backbone like insects, crayfish, snails, and worms. They live under rocks and depend on the spaces between rocks to shelter them from the current and predators like fish. These spaces also collect organic material that different macroinvertebrates feed on. Lots of small fish also use coarse rocky substrate as cover, including juvenile bass. But excess silt and sediment from erosion can bury rocky substrate and fill in the spaces between the rocks. So that's why you want to avoid areas with excess silt and sediment when you're targeting upland species of black bass like the Talapusa bass. Okay, the next species was this solid Bartram Bass caught in late June on a Texas-rigged green pumpkin red Zoom finesse worm with an 1/8 ounce bullet weight and a Gamakatsu 1/0 offset worm hook. As far as tackle goes, I was using the exact same rig. A 6'9" medium power spinning rod with a fast action and a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Berkeley Trilene XL monofilament line. It was a pretty typical summer day as far as the weather goes. Hot and mostly sunny conditions. The water was low and extremely clear. If you watched the video, you could probably tell there's a good population of Bartram bass in this stream. And that's because they're basically the only black bass in this section, which is increasingly rare these days due to the illegal introduction and spread of non-native Alabama bass in the Savannah River drainage. And remember the land use changes we just talked about? This is one of the few streams with a federally protected buffer zone about a 1/4 mile wide on both sides of the stream. Within that buffer zone, land development and motorized vehicles are not allowed, so you have lots of clean, coarse substrate free of silt and other fine sediment. At just under 12 inches, this was the largest Bartram bass I caught that day, and as you can see, it was near the head of this pool in the shade where a few hardwood trees were leaning over the water. In the summer, upland species of black bass feed heavily on terrestrial insects that fall into the water, so this was just a textbook summer spot. Another thing I want to mention real quick is that fish holding near the head of a pool are often in or near real shallow water, and it doesn't take much to spook them. There were some good examples of this in the Redeye Bass video last July. That's why I prefer fishing upstream whenever possible. When I do fish downstream and find a good looking spot like this, I'll get out of the kayak and walk to it so I don't spook the fish. Just make sure you're not sending clouds of silt downstream when you're walking or wading in the water. Next up was this nice Redeye Bass caught the second week of July on a silver Rapala skitter prop. And I was fishing that lure on a 7-foot light medium heavy power Kistler Argon casting rod with a fast action. And the reel was a Shimano 200 series Corrado with 30-pound Moss Green Power Pro Spectra braided line. And I use a monofilament leader anytime I'm using a topwater lure. The only exception to that would be some kind of frog or toad and maybe a buzzbait around real heavy cover. I use a monofilament leader with topwater lures because they not only have more action, but it also helps keep the braid away from the lures so it's not getting caught in spinning props or the split rings. With the skitter prop, I usually have a short 17 or 20-pound mono leader. In this video, I was using 17-pound low-vis green Stren High Impact. Again, the Power Pro and Stren High Impact are both available at Walmart, and if they don't have the Stren High Impact, I'll use Berkeley Trilene Big Game for the leader. This was mid-July, so real hot, mostly sunny conditions with a few scattered afternoon thunderstorms. The water was low and extremely clear, so conditions were pretty much ideal for fishing. In addition to the Redeye Bass, I also caught a solid Alabama bass on the skitter prop that I used for my spotted bass submission. Most of the better Alabama bass and quite a few Redeye Bass were caught in or near rocky braided runs lined with water willow. Obviously, because these runs are shallow and can have a lot of current, the best way to fish them is to wade upstream. And I like fishing near these runs during the hottest part of the summer in July, August, and early September. The next fish was this nice Chattahuchi Bass caught the second week of August on a Texas-rigged green pumpkin purple Zoom finesse worm with an 1/8 ounce bullet weight and a Gamakatsu 1/0 offset worm hook. I was fishing that rig on a 6/8 St. Croix Mojo Bass spinning rod. It's a medium power with an extra fast action. St. Croix actually stopped making that series a few years ago. They did come out with the Mojo Bass Trigon series recently, but those rods have a completely different handle. The reel was a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Sunline Assassin FC fluorocarbon line, and it was a pretty typical summer day as far as the weather goes. hot and mostly sunny conditions. The water was extremely low and clear, so most of the fish were caught in or near some kind of deeper refuge habitat, usually pools and channel bends with at least 3 or 4 feet of water. Again, if you watched the video, you probably noticed we caught several Chattahuchi bass, and that's because they're basically the only black bass in this section of the stream. Non-native Alabama bass have not been introduced to this section. Every now and then you will see the odd largemouth, but those fish come from man-made farm ponds built on creeks that flow into the stream we were fishing. Another reason you still have a catchable population of Chattahuchi bass in this stream is because it hasn't been heavily impacted by land use changes. But that's slowly changing every year as more and more land is developed along the stream. Okay, the next species was this solid Ultimah bass caught near the end of October on a Texas-rigged green pumpkin red zoom finesse worm with an 1/8 ounce bullet weight and a Gamakatsu 1/0 offset worm hook. And I was fishing that rig on a 6/8 St. Croix Mojo Bass spinning rod. It's a medium power with an extra fast action. Again, that series was discontinued by St. Croix a few years ago. It's been replaced by the Mojo Bass Trigon series, which is a similar rod, but they made some major changes to the handle. The reel was a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Sunline Assassin FC fluorocarbon line. It was a pretty typical fall day, and conditions were pretty much ideal for late October. Mostly sunny and warm, the water was low and relatively clear. In the fall, upland species of black bass, like the Ultimah bass, are usually going to be in or near some kind of deeper refuge habitat. The best areas typically have at least 3 or 4 feet of water available with a slow to moderate current. Avoid areas with lots of silt and other fine sediment. You're basically looking for flowing pools, runs, and channel bends with bedrock outcrops or boulders and clean, coarse substrate. Unfortunately, the illegal introduction and spread of non-native species has led to widespread hybridization throughout the upper Ultimah River drainage. Today, Ultimah bass have been eliminated from most of their historic range, so the biggest challenge when you target these fish is just finding a catchable population. The best way to do that is to fish streams that have some kind of barrier to keep non-native species out. This can be a man-made barrier like a low-head dam, or it can be a natural barrier like a big drop or a waterfall. Now, just because you find some kind of barrier, that doesn't always guarantee the section upstream will be free of non-native species. And again, that's because people sometimes move fish above those barriers. It's really unfortunate, but it happens more than you think. Next up was this shoal bass caught on a rainy winter day in December. This fish had a Lucky Craft Pointer 78 jerkbait in the chartreuse shad color. I like that color anytime it's overcast or the water is stained. The day I caught this fish, it was real overcast and at times there was some light rain. The river was low and relatively clear, and I was fishing that jerkbait on a custom 6'9" spinning rod my friend Alex Weissman made a few years ago from an American Tackle Bushido rod blank. It's a medium power with a fast action, and the reel was a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Sunline Assassin FC fluorocarbon line. During the late fall and winter months, most shoal bass are going to be in or near some kind of deeper refuge habitat. The best areas typically have at least 3 or 4 feet of water available with a slow to moderate current. Again, you're basically looking for pools, runs, and channel bends with bedrock outcrops or boulders and clean, coarse substrate. That's really important when it comes to stream specialists like shoal bass. When water temps start dropping during the late fall and winter months, I never catch stream specialists near silt. You always want clean, coarse substrate. In most cases, strong currents and turbulence during high water periods keep the smaller, lighter particles of sediment like silt and clay moving downstream. And if you're wondering how fish live there, they typically move closer to whatever current break is available when the water starts coming up. That's why these fish like having bedrock outcrops, boulders, and irregular banks available when the water is cold. The next species was this really nice Swany Bass caught in December on a Texas-rigged green pumpkin red zoom finesse worm with an 1/8 ounce bullet weight and a Gamakatsu 1/0 offset worm hook. And I was fishing that rig on the custom 6'9" spinning rod my friend Alex made. It's a medium power with a fast action, and the reel was a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Sunline Assassin FC fluorocarbon line. The river was low and relatively clear. Conditions were pretty much ideal for fishing because the high that day was in the upper 70s, which is not that unusual for South Georgia in December. But when you have warm days like that, there's usually rain in the forecast at some point, and that's exactly what happened later that night. There was a real strong line of thunderstorms coming with a lot of rain, and I made a last-minute decision that morning to make the 4-hour drive south to try and fish ahead of those storms. Long story short, by the time I got down there, I only had 2 or 3 hours to fish before dark. And this Swany Bass was actually the only one I caught. It was holding near the inside edge of this channel bend. If you look at this map, you can see this isn't your typical channel bend. The inside of this bend had current, so there wasn't a big sand or silt deposit there. And I caught that Swany Bass in this general area right before dark. With the low water, it was probably 3 or 4 feet deep where the fish was holding, and there was a slow to moderate uniform current flowing through this bend. The bottom felt like it was mostly coarse sand with some scattered rock and wood cover. I had already fished the outside of this bend because I almost always catch a Swany Bass there, usually where the channel turns into or away from the bank, but not this time, which really surprised me. So that made me think with the low water the fish might be farther off the bank, and I was more or less fan casting out into and across the channel when I caught that fish. And for whatever reason, I catch a lot of good fish doing that anytime the water is low, usually late summer through fall and early winter here in the southeast. I don't know if it's a low water thing or fishing pressure, but I've caught shoal bass, Alabama bass, smallmouth bass, Swany bass, and several upland species doing this. And just to be clear, my kayak was in 1 or 2 feet of water, and I'm casting out into or across the channel. The size of the stream will obviously determine how far you can cast across it, but there are a few reasons I like casting from the inside of the channel bend. When the water is low, really clear, or there's a slow to moderate current, you're less likely to spook fish. I'll even get out of the kayak and wade whenever possible, as long as I'm not stirring up clouds of silt and other fine sediment. I also catch a lot of fish casting into deeper water and dragging the bait uphill out of the channel. Again, this is going to be most effective during low water periods and on rivers that get a lot of fishing pressure, where a lot of the obvious spots are being fished. I like soft plastics on a Texas rig or a shaky head, but a weedless Ned rig or a finesse jig would also work. Next is this fish I used for my largemouth bass submission. It was caught in the same river about 2 hours before I caught the Swany Bass. This could have been a Florida bass or a largemouth Florida hybrid. And I say that because largemouth bass have never been documented below the fall line here in Georgia. I didn't really know that until I spoke with a biologist about a year ago. Anyway, I caught this fish flipping another channel bend with a Strike King Denny Brauer Pro flipping tube in the pumpkin red-green flake color. That's a 4.5-inch tube that I Texas rigged with a Gamakatsu 4/0 Superline extra wide gap hook and a 1/4-ounce tungsten bullet weight. And I was flipping with a Dobyns FR735C Fury casting rod. That's a 7.3 extra heavy rod with a fast action. I really like that rod for the money. You can't beat it. I fish hollow body frogs with that rod, but I also flip with it. The 7.3 length is great for creeks and rivers where you have a lot of trees that hang over the water. And the reel was a Shimano 200 series Corrado with 20-pound green Berkeley Trilene big game mono. And last but not least, it all came down to this trip in late December. December 30th to be exact, and the only bass I haven't caught at this point is the Smallmouth Bass. So I made the 3.5-hour drive east to fish the Savannah River near Augusta. Now, smallmouth bass are not native to the Savannah River. They were illegally introduced by anglers over 20 years ago. Before the smallmouth were introduced, Bartram Bass and Largemouth Bass were the only black bass in this section of the river. Unfortunately, there has been extensive hybridization between the native Bartram Bass and the non-native smallmouth. So a lot of the fish that resemble smallmouth and Bartram Bass in this section are actually hybrids. Wow. That one might be too big. Don't do that. That fish doesn't even know it's hooked. Oh, please. Oh, wow. I just wanted an 8-incher. I just wanted an 8-inch smallmouth for the Bass Slam. I did not want a giant on a jerkbait with tiny hooks. I just wanted an 8-inch smallmouth, not this thing. It appears to be, well, I'm not even going to say how I think it's hooked. Try to keep him swimming in the same direction. Yeah, right. I'm sure everybody watching this just had a good laugh when I said that. I'd rather just wear him down under the boat than bring him in by the boat and have him jumping all over the place. Although the water's on the cool side, they still can they can still jump, folks. We got him. We got him. Look at that. Look at this, folks. One hook. One hook. So you probably noticed that fish was caught on a jerkbait. That's a Lucky Craft Pointer 78 jerkbait in the chartreuse shad color. I like that color anytime it's overcast or the water is stained, but it obviously works when the sun is out and the water is clear. Actually, I really do have more confidence in natural colors anytime the water is clear. That just happened to be the first jerkbait I found that day, so that's why I was using it. The river was low and relatively clear, and I was fishing that jerkbait on the custom 6'9" spinning rod my friend Alex Weissman made. It's a medium power with a fast action, and the reel was a Shimano 2500 Stratic with 8-pound Sunline Assassin FC fluorocarbon line. That fish was caught in a large pool with a slow to moderate current, and it was holding near a large bedrock outcrop. River depth varies in that area between 5 and 10 feet, and the fish was holding near a bedrock outcrop that was maybe 2 or 3 feet higher than the bottom around it. And that was my 2024 Georgia Bass Slam. I hope everyone is able to catch a Georgia Bass Slam at some point. It really is a fun challenge, and I think it'll make you a better angler. If you'd like to learn more about the Georgia Bass Slam or any of the species eligible for the slam, the Georgia DNR has an excellent website that's a great resource for anglers.